The morning started like 100 others had. Cold air. Damp earth. That thin gray light just before sunrise where everything looks the same shade of tired. The kind of morning where your breath fogs in front of your face and your boots sink slightly into the mud with every step. No one was thinking about history or heroics. They were thinking about coffee. Dry socks. Maybe a hot meal when this patrol was over. It was supposed to be simple. A small American unit, moving quietly through a stretch of wooded countryside somewhere in Europe, tasked with scouting ahead and reporting back. Nothing glamorous. Just another routine mission in a war that had already blurred into weeks of marching, waiting, and wondering when your luck might finally run out. They joked to pass the time. One guy complained about the rations. Another swore that when he got home, he'd never camp a day in his life again. Someone teased the youngest soldier in the group about the girl whose photo he kept folded in his helmet liner. Little stuff. Normal stuff. The kind of conversations you only have when you still believe you're coming back. That's what makes it hit harder. Because none of them saw it coming. It happened fast. Too fast. 1 second, just the sound of boots and birds. The next, the forest exploded. Gunfire ripped through the trees, sharp and sudden. Dirt kicked up around them. Branches snapped. Someone shouted, "Contact left." And then everything dissolved into chaos. Men dove for cover behind logs and rocks. Return fire cracked through the air. Radios buzzed with half-heard commands that cut out mid-sentence. They couldn't even see the enemy clearly. The Germans had the high ground. Machine guns already zeroed in. It wasn't a fight. It was a trap. Within seconds, 2 men were down. Another screamed for a medic. Smoke grenades hissed, but there was nowhere to move. Every direction they turned, more bullets stitched through the trees. Training told them to regroup, to flank, to push back. Reality told them they were surrounded. You can feel the shift when hope disappears. It's quiet, heavy. Like the air itself thickens. A few tried to crawl away. One made it 10 feet before a burst of fire pinned him flat. Ammo started running low. Magazines emptying faster than they could reload. The jokes were gone now. No bravado. Just heartbeats hammering in their ears. Then came the shouting. German voices. Close. Too close. Raus. Hand hoch. Quote. Hands up. Rifles pointed straight at their faces. One by one, the Americans looked at each other. Muddy. Shaking. Still breathing, for now. And in that long, awful second, they all understood the same thing without saying it. This wasn't a battle anymore. They weren't soldiers on a mission. They were prisoners. They dropped their weapons. Hands raised. And as the Germans marched them toward a hidden network of concrete bunkers carved into the hillside, a cold thought settled in their minds like ice. Behind enemy lines. No backup. No rescue. If they wanted to see home again, they were going to have to survive something far worse than a firefight. By the time they reached the bunker complex, the adrenaline from the ambush had worn off, and what replaced it was something worse. Reality. Not the loud, chaotic kind from the battlefield, but the slow, sinking kind that creeps into your chest and just sits there. The entrance was barely visible from a distance. Camouflaged into the hillside with logs, dirt, and netting. If you didn't know it was there, you'd walk right past it. But up close, it looked like the mouth of something waiting to swallow them whole. Thick concrete. Rusted steel doors. Sandbags stacked high. Machine gun nests staring down every approach. This wasn't temporary. This place had been built to hold. The guards shoved them forward. Rifles jabbing into their backs. Boots scraping against stone steps as they were forced underground. The air changed immediately. Colder. Damp. Heavy with the smell of oil, sweat, and mildew. Overhead lights flickered weakly, casting long shadows that made the narrow corridors feel even tighter. Every sound echoed. Footsteps. Metal doors slamming. Distant voices speaking sharp, clipped German. It felt less like a military base and more like a tomb. They were separated fast. Names shouted. Men dragged in different directions. 1 second you're next to the guy you trained with, joked with, trusted your life with, and the next he's gone behind a steel door you can't open. No explanations. No reassurances. Just gone. The wounded didn't get special treatment either. One soldier with a bandaged arm asked for a medic and got laughed at. Another was shoved into a wall when he moved too slow. The message was clear without anyone saying it. You don't matter here. You're not soldiers anymore. You're cargo. Time stretched in strange ways underground. There were no windows. No sunlight. Just that constant artificial glow that made it impossible to tell if it had been 10 minutes or 10 hours. Hunger gnawed at them. Thirst dried their throats. Every time Boots approached down the corridor, hearts jumped, wondering if this was an interrogation or something worse. And the rumors started. Whispers passed between cells when guards weren't listening. Did you hear that truck earlier? Quote. They moved 3 guys last night. Never came back. Quote. Someone said prisoners get transferred east. No one finished that sentence. They didn't have to. You could see it happening, slow and quiet. Hope draining out of the group. Shoulders slumping. Eyes unfocused. Men staring at the floor like they were already defeated. Captivity does that. It doesn't just trap your body. It works on your mind, little by little, until you start believing escape isn't even possible. Almost everyone felt it. Almost everyone except one. While the others counted hours, he counted guards. While they replayed the ambush in their heads, he watched patterns. Shift changes. Who smoked? Who got lazy? Which doors stayed unlocked a second too long? He memorized footsteps. Heavy boots meant patrol, lighter ones meant a single sentry. Even the lights flickering became a kind of clock. He barely spoke. Didn't complain. Didn't panic. Because in his head, something had already shifted. This wasn't a prison. It was a puzzle. And every routine, every mistake, every careless guard was a piece. The others were waiting to be saved. He'd already decided no one was coming. If he was getting out of this place, he was going to have to carve his own way through it. The opportunity didn't arrive with some dramatic warning or heroic music playing in the background. It came the way most life or death chances do. Small, messy, and easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. But he was paying attention. By then, the bunker's rhythms were burned into his brain. He knew which guard dragged his boots when he walked. Which one stopped to light a cigarette at the end of the hall. Which door never quite latched unless you slammed it twice. Hours of watching. Listening. Pretending to be just another exhausted prisoner had turned him into something else entirely. Patient. Quiet. Ready. It started with noise. Distant artillery. Allied shells landing somewhere miles away. Not close enough to hit the bunker. But close enough to rattle dust from the ceiling and make the lights flicker. The Germans got jumpy. You could hear it in their voices. Orders barked louder than usual. Boots moving faster through the corridors. Then came the mistake. One guard, rushing, alone. He stopped outside the cell door, fumbling with his keys, distracted by the rumble overhead. For a split second, he wasn't watching the prisoners. He wasn't watching anything. And that was all it took. The door cracked open. The guard stepped in. Too close. Before the man could even raise his rifle, the American moved. Fast. Violent. No hesitation. He slammed into the guard, driving him into the wall. A sharp grunt, a struggle, boots scraping concrete. Hands fighting for the weapon. Training took over. A hard strike. A choke. Silence. It was over in seconds. The guard slid to the floor. And suddenly, for the first time since the ambush, there was a rifle in his hands again. You can imagine the heartbeat at that moment. Loud. Almost deafening. Because once you cross that line, there's no going back. If he got caught now, it wouldn't be a cell. It'd be a bullet. He didn't think. He moved. Out into the corridor. Left, just like he'd memorized. The first bunker room was only 20 feet away. 2 soldiers inside, half distracted by the shelling outside. They never expected an attack from behind their own lines. 2 quick shots. Deafening in the tight hallway. Muzzle flashes lighting the concrete walls like lightning. Both down. He grabbed extra ammo and kept going. Now the alarms started. Shouting in German. Doors slamming. Confusion spreading like fire. But confusion was his advantage. He hit the second bunker fast, firing through the doorway before they even knew who he was. Smoke filled the air. Someone yelled. Someone fell. He didn't stop to check. He couldn't. Every second counted. Third bunker. Fourth. Each one a blur of noise and recoil and echoing gunshots that made his ears ring. Tight corridors turned every fight into point-blank chaos. No room for fear. No room for doubt. Just instinct. Clear. Move. Shoot. Move. The Germans thought they were under attack by a squad. They had no idea it was just one man running on pure adrenaline in the raw, desperate need to live. By the time he reached the 5th bunker, they were scrambling. tripping over each other, trying to figure out where the assault was coming from. By the 6th, the whole complex felt like it was collapsing into panic. And somewhere in that storm of gunfire and shouting, the impossible became real. One exhausted American prisoner was tearing a hole straight through a fortress that was supposed to hold dozens. By the time the gunfire finally slowed, the bunker didn't sound like a fortress anymore. It sounded confused, scattered, broken. Smoke hung in the corridors, mixing with dust from the ceiling and that sharp metallic smell that always follows a firefight. Somewhere deeper inside, a door banged open and shut. A voice shouted orders that nobody seemed to follow. Boots ran in the wrong direction. Radios crackled with panic. For the first time since they'd been dragged underground, the Germans weren't in control. He was. But adrenaline only carries you so far. His hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from exhaustion. Every breath burned. His ears rang so loudly it felt like he was underwater. He'd lost track of how many rounds he'd fired, how many corners he'd turned, how many men had tried to stop him. All he knew was that if he stopped moving, even for a second, it was over. So he turned back toward the cells. That part mattered just as much. Because this had never just been about escape. It was about getting them out too. He reached the first locked door and smashed the butt of his rifle against the handle. Once. Twice. The metal gave way. Inside, 2 Americans flinched back, squinting through the smoke like they couldn't process what they were seeing. For a second, they just stared at him. Move, he barked. Right now. Quote. They didn't argue. One by one, he forced open the others. Faces that had looked defeated hours ago suddenly snapped awake. Confused. Hopeful. Disbelieving. What's happening? Quote. Are we getting shelled? Quote. How? Question mark. Quote. No time, he cut them off. Grab anything you can carry and follow me. Quote. And just like that, the prisoners weren't prisoners anymore. They were a group again. Limping, bruised, some half-starved. But moving. Alive. They slipped through the corridors he'd just cleared, stepping over debris, past abandoned rifles and flickering lights. Every distant noise made their hearts jump. At any moment, reinforcements could show up. One machine gun nest could end all of this in seconds. The exit felt farther than it had before. Like the bunker was trying to pull them back in. Then finally. Cold air. Night sky. Trees swaying in the wind. They stumbled out of that hidden entrance like men surfacing from underwater. Nobody spoke for a moment. They just breathed. Real air. Fresh air. Freedom that didn't smell like concrete and rust. But they weren't safe yet. So they kept moving. Sticking to the tree line. Half carrying the wounded, heading toward where they hoped Allied lines were. Hours passed in silence, boots crunching over dirt, every shadow looking like a patrol. Until, just before dawn, they heard something beautiful. English. American voices. Friendly rifles aimed their way. The looks on the soldiers' faces said it all. Shock. Confusion. These guys were supposed to be missing, maybe dead. And when they tried explaining what happened. 6 bunkers, guards down, 1 man clearing the path. It sounded insane. Like something out of a movie. But the rescued prisoners standing there were proof enough. It wasn't some larger-than-life superhero story. It was just an ordinary guy who refused to die quietly. And somehow, in the darkest place imaginable, that stubborn refusal turned him into a legend.